Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions, how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in. Hey, hello. My guest today is Krizia Li, founder and CEO of Vermillion, a B2B e-commerce platform in Asian luxury design and arts. Hi, Krizia.
Hi, Jen. How are you doing?
Good. And how are you? I know you're recovering for COVID. So, if you cough a little, sniffle a little today, that's totally fine.
It's authentic. Yes.
It's
Thank you.
authentic. And this is all about being authentic. So
Yes.
welcome to Curito Connects. And before I begin, I normally would like to give a shout out or introduce how I met my guests. And so I met you through a mutual friend of ours, Christine Yu. So hi to Christine. And she introduced us about over a year ago. And I've admired Krizia's entrepreneurial energy from the day we connected. She's super passionate about her business and what she's achieving with it, which I will have you share with us a little bit later. Krizia's impactful moments that we will share today are two events that I personally think really gives light on how it led her to create Vermillion. So back in 2008, before attending business school, Krizia took an internship at Grameen Bank in Bangladesh and in Haiti after Haiti recovered from that big earthquake they had. And that made her realize the power of social change. And then in 2012, when you visited the Met Costume Institute in New York City at the exhibition Through the Looking Glass, you noticed that the curators defined Chinese fashion with a lot of Vietnamese-style patties farming cone hats, which made you realize that Chinese culture was kind of misinterpreted. And I think these two moments really made you think about what it means to be represented culturally and socially. So, Chrissy, I'm going to stop here, and I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience first, and then we can jump into these moments where you were moved by them and how it turned that light switch for you to start Vermillion in 2020, the year COVID hit the world.
Yes, the best year to start a company. But yes, hi everyone. I'm Krizia. I'm the founder of Vermillion, and Vermillion is a B2B e-commerce platform that showcases Asian luxury lifestyle brands to the world. And thank you, Jen, for pointing out kind of a few of my kind of life turning points, but definitely one of the things that really hit me was the underrepresentation of Asian creators and makers in many spheres, actually. Not just talking about like normal industry, but definitely in the creative arts. Asian designers are very underrepresented, and it's often dominated by quite Western brands. So, say, French or Italian, Swiss or German brands, there's a lot of them, and they command really high pricing. But for some reason, Asian brands have always been seen as lower end, very mass, and maybe not the highest quality. And of course, this theme has persisted in quite a few generations since industrialization in Asia. But I definitely think we are at a turning point in the Asian economic evolution where we should seize back control of the narrative and just really say, hey, a lot of the innovations around the world were driven by Asian entrepreneurs and Asian originators, and we're not getting the due recognition for it. And the world is starting to wake up to that too. I mean, a lot of factories, manufacturers, they do know, for example, AI or even machinery, 3D printing. A lot of these are much more advanced in Asia than they are in the Western world. And so I think the insiders are already finding that out, but now how to communicate it with the rest of the world. And so that's what our platform tries to do. And we try to do that in different spheres, mostly starting with home and lifestyle. And so we do have things that you can touch, see, but also hear, feel, smell, and taste as well. So it's a full-on lifestyle spectrum for Asian brands and products. So just to give you an idea, we not only carry, tables, chairs, stools, but we also carry art, but we also carry fragrances, candles, personal care, skincare, and also speakers. So anything you could conceivably find in a hospitality space, we would offer the best of Asia to you.
That is a beautiful summary of what Vermillion does. But I'm going to loop us back to having you share with us about yourself.
So, a bit about my development path, I guess. I would say that it really started from university. So, I went to Oxford. I studied politics, philosophy, economics. We did a lot of emerging market economics. So, at the time, I was quite into social enterprise, for profit social enterprise, international organizations like United Nations. But of course, Hong Kong is not a representative state. And so we were not really allowed to participate in a lot of international organizations as well. So anyone with a social responsibility and care really had to do it from a private sector point of view. And so I joined investment banking. I was thinking about how to raise capital for different companies. And then we joined McKinsey, that was really thinking about how to grow brands, especially bringing multinational brands into Asia. So that really kind of started my journey with thinking about consumer brands. And then afterwards, I was working at Marriott for hospitality, and then McDonald's for F&B service delivery. And then I realized at one point that I could be working for large Fortune 100s for the rest of my life, may not be getting to the top of the game because those are multinational companies. And I'd always be the representative from Asia. Or we could really try and start and build something that would disrupt the world. And I figured you're at a good age with a good professional network, good experience to try this. So maybe now is the time when you still have the energy and the freedom to do something that might change the course of the world. Now is the moment. And so I am now giving it a go.
I wanted to ask you, when you mentioned that you studied social enterprise at Oxford and when you did your internship at Grameen, if you can talk a little bit about the internship and also about Grameen for those who are listening who have never heard of this organization, what they do and how you got involved with it. And I thought that was very interesting that you brought up the fact that being in coming back home, which is Hong Kong for you, there isn't as many like nonprofit social enterprise companies, so to speak. So you had to then go in from another angle, which Hong Kong is known for, right? A lot of financial institutions, a lot of big consulting firms. So you went into the field with that direction of the fundraising aspect. And so could you kind of elaborate a little bit more about how you were able to merge the two on top of your internship experience and what really was eye-opening for you at that point?
Yeah. So why don't I start with Grameen Bank and the amazing organization that is. I think most people who pay attention to social enterprises and international organizations might have heard of them before. It was started by Muhammad Yunus, who is a Bangladeshi, I believe, a professor of economics. And then he actually started a microfinance organization, which then grew to encompass many different industries. So it's really about, it started with borrowings. So small farmers, mostly ladies in the countryside, because they actually realized that if they're borrowing, the most responsible person in the village usually is the ladies. So they tend to be more socially networked and they have a stronger sense of responsibility. And they also, as a women's cooperative, they tend to hold each other responsible for group decision making. And so they found microcredit to be especially effective, and the return rates being much higher if you work through the female. segment. And a lot of these ladies in the Bangladeshi villages are borrowing tiny amounts of money to buy a cow, or like to buy a tractor, or to buy a motorbike. And, often to feed the family, like dairy products, or to transport things to the farm, or, till the fields. These are just very small amounts, but could make a really huge incremental impact to their livelihoods. And so that's what Muhammad Yunus really focused on. But then, of course, microcredit became a really big deal, and actually became profitable, in the sense that he could actually have capital to plow into other areas. And so he started applying microcredit to agriculture and fisheries in general. So they actually have lots of fish farms, for example, that also are run under the Grameen organization. And they also do textiles. So they do women's cooperatives and factories that create textiles for export. And so, like, the Grameen organization actually has become quite a conglomerate now in many different pillars, different industries, but always with the same mission of to empower, the individual in the agricultural villages, and really mobilize them in terms of economic productivity, and also uh, financial self sufficiency. And so I applied to it, actually, because I heard somebody else had been on an internship, and you can actually determine how long you're there for. Some of my Oxford classmates could probably be there for like whole 6 months, but I was there for a very short one, and I had to have a translator come with me, and I went to stay at a bank branch where I followed the bank GM around to all his lending meetings. And the translator would translate to me the whole process. So I could see the ledger. He would tell me what everyone was borrowing the money for, and like the people returning on the interest, like, and how the ladies would work together, and I could interview the ladies as well. And at the same time, I was teaching the bank GM's daughter English, and we were cooking meals together at their home. And he would also introduce me to um, the different organizations. So I was at a village, but then I would meet the provincial GM as well. And I would also have a social with all the other interns that were either interning at the textiles, or the agriculture and fisheries departments as well. So then there could be a lot of mind meld in terms of you understanding how the entire Grameen organization works across all the different pillars, which is really amazing because in Hong Kong, it's an international city. There's microcredit is really for countries with large amounts of kind of small, medium enterprises, and individual economic contributors, either in the agriculture, or you can also do that in workshops. And but like generally speaking, Hong Kong doesn't really have microcredit, and so it was really eye opening, and it was really about tying in the emerging economy and how to move a less economic developed country into a mature economic country, which I thought was very key, being a person from Asia and understanding how to kind of drive the engine. And it was a lot more meaningful to me than my investment banking job, obviously, at the time, because I hate to say it, but like, investment banking is for the companies that have already made it. But there's so many other companies that have very little chance of making it. And so where you want to put your emphasis and your time and your effort in the legacy that you're leaving the world is very key to me. And I chose to put that in economic empowerment, and for-profit social enterprise instead, because I really felt that that would move the needle for a lot more impact.
Wow. I'm like still processing everything you just said, and how that, on top of what you introduced very beginning of the conversation with Asian culture and Asian designers and artists, and how like you really did merge the two together for where you created Vermillion today. And so for you, were there any Were there any challenges during this period of when you decided to switch out of corporate, right? Because like you mentioned earlier, you could have just chose to stay put in these, top 100 companies, which you built your career upon, after you graduated and from school. So what was the driving force for you to decide to switch, to be like, okay, well, you're still hungry to want to make an impact on the social enterprise side, which obviously for Vermillion is introducing all these, very boutiquey designers and helping them get on a platform where they get more exposure to the world to see these, all these amazing craftsmen in the region, and then also to promote the authentic, as we're talking about authenticity,
Yes.
representation of these different cultures in Asia.
Yeah, I guess the challenges were, I would say, honestly, I think this touched a chord with many people. I mean, because it's a for-profit social enterprise and it's not just like a charitable activity, people could see that there's a path to profitability and self-sustainability, and I think that's quite key actually, because like when you want to make social change, I and Muhammad Yunus, the whole principle is that what you're doing should be able to maintain the momentum for these brands to find a path out to financial independence. Um, and that I think a lot of people see value. It wasn't that hard to get everyone on board. Um, I do think, however, that like working with small, medium-sized creators and makers, and I'm sure many people also agree, it's not easy. Actually, half the time, the challenge is really unbottlenecking people's thinking, because a lot of small, medium-sized makers and creators tend to not necessarily be the most professional segment. They tend to be much more kind of hands-on, operational, micro, and they don't necessarily think like a platform. They have platform-based thinking, which means that they just are very happy doing their one thing over and over again, but they don't think beyond that. And so, actually, a lot of the times, the challenge of building a platform with emerging makers is helping them see the bigger picture, but also giving them the development path to kind of get to the sophistication level where they could achieve the bigger picture as well. So, for example, a lot of brands never considered social media marketing, even, or they never considered international shipping, or they never considered working with English speaking clients, because in their space, they were very happy to maintain it within the limited sphere that they could understand themselves. But going beyond the sphere that they can understand is actually part of the challenge. And I'm sure, Jen, you're like nodding too, because like you probably encountered a little bit of that. There's a bit of the fear. They have some fear sometimes of going into the unknown and the unfamiliar.
Yes.
Yes. And so when you ask them to do things beyond their comfort level, a lot of it's like the persuasion that you have, your skills of helping them see like the benefits to them, um, and the participation. For the client side, funnily enough, it's actually, they're quite on board. They're like, oh, I want to help them. Like, I want to give them business. I want to meet more kind of small, unknown, fresh, young brands. Like the client side is not the problem. Actually, so half the time, it's the kind of the brand partner side that is the hurdle you need to overcome. It's very interesting, huh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I like that we are sharing this. How should I put it? Normally you would think in a situation of how you created this with that passion and what you were trying to drive it, and then while you're doing it, you're unfolding where the issue, like not issues, but just kind of like where your challenges are that you didn't think it would be the case. It's like complete opposite, right? Like you're having this opposite effect.
Yeah, a lot of the time when you start a company, what you think might be the challenge is actually not the actual challenge you're going to encounter. All your theories might go out the window, and then you suddenly realize that you're encountering a whole different situation that you thought before. Like, it's anything from the pricing the clients are willing to absorb to the model, the expectations of the different sides, which are completely not the same as what you thought might be. There's a lot of learnings and a lot of unexpected situations. And you just kind of have to take it as it comes. That's really what like being entrepreneurial is about. Like finding the pain points and also the opportunities and reacting to them very quickly.
And so you started during COVID, and how has that been for you as a online platform and physical products? Was that tricky for you to launch during this COVID period?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm sure a lot of companies will agree. COVID made everyone very risk averse and very conservative. And so a lot of people would probably be reacting slightly differently to how they would normally react in a normal time, whether they're like waiting and seeing when they should spend money, or a lot of projects being postponed and delayed because, like, people are not able to come back to the factory to work and like they can't produce things on deadline, or they can't ship out because all the shipping companies are also very um you know disrupted in supply chains. And just so many parts of the chain were disrupted by COVID at some way or another. But generally, I think it just highlights the need of digitization, because you can rely on clients around you in person, but during COVID, it just goes to show when you can't leave the house, when you can't visit a factory, when you can't have a face-to-face meeting, these digital sales channels become so much more crucial. And especially if people can't fly, so no one can fly to see a factory or due diligence something, or like quality control like your production line. Like digital is the next best thing. And having that contingency plan is really crucial. And so, actually, a lot of industries have discovered during COVID that digitalization has got to be the way forward. So, in a way, it was advantageous for us, but on the actual execution side of like, having people to build the product and to get people to ship the product, that was difficult. But like the market need was in fact doubly highlighted. So, net, I guess, it positive and with little challenges. Yeah.
So kind of going back to you, you did already illustrate the reasons for what inspired you to start Vermillion, but if you had to go back and think about some of the, like how you were raised. You're born and raised in Hong Kong, is that right? Or you were?
I was born in London and raised in Hong Kong. Went to boarding school in the UK, and then I did masters in the US. But worked in Hong Kong most of my life, flying to China and Southeast Asia.
Yeah, quite global.
Yeah, I guess so. How that impacted the worldview, I suppose.
Yes, how it impacted your worldview, and yeah.
Well, I think it's definitely a privilege, right, to be able to travel and work with many different clients across many different geographies and countries, because the context is quite different. Like I worked in Jakarta, I worked in Vietnam, I also worked in Beijing and Shanghai. I worked on IPOs in Thailand. You know, um, all the countries have different uh, environments and uh, context. So, for example, um, if you are operating in Thailand, it's very, very different from like operating in Shanghai. Like not just regulatory, but the people's mindsets and sensibilities are also very, very different, right? Like it's like if you are in Southeast Asia, people tend to be more relaxed and chill and like, they're happy. Whereas in the north, like people are a lot more kind of like, you know, very
Aggressive.
purposeful, driven, aggressive. Yeah, like just a lot of it gives you a lot more I think tolerance and understanding of variety. And that's really what our platform also is about. It's like we're working across 12 different countries, right? So we're working in like Japan, Korea, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. And so when we sourcing from all these countries, the way of doing business is also quite different. So in Japan, you would prefer to speak Japanese, the local language, and you'd have to know a lot of the business etiquette, like the gift giving, the greetings, the formalities, the unspoken rules, the courtesies, and the respect that you have to confer the craftsmen. These in Japan, like these business etiquette rules are quite different from those in, say, I don't know, China, for example. China, everyone's very motivated, very ambitious. Everyone wants to make money. So everyone's like, I'll try anything. Whereas, like, I would say in Japan, doing business would be quite conservative, right? So
Right.
it's just like, yeah, a lot of this exposure would build into a person the tolerance and also the agility and flexibility to anticipate different situations, which could create a different dynamics, like whether positive dynamic or maybe a potential kind of like challenge. And a lot of it's people driven. So having that exposure actually really helps your EQ. And, EQ in doing business is definitely a very large part of it, right?
Mm.
Yeah. It's not just the functional money making side. The way that you're making money is also quite important.
Did anyone in your social circle in your life, I guess like mentors, so to speak, kind of like guided you in this like path, so to speak, for you to realize this, or are you more kind of like you just really experienced it and then you went into different industries and exposures for you to be like, oh, okay, this is how the world works. Like this is how this works. And I'm assuming you apply this with your staff at Vermillion as well, your client facing side as well, with how you structure and run the business.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I've had a lot of women leaders and women role models, all of the very different styles, of course. I mean, in banking, I had women MDs, McKinsey, women partners, and of course, not just women, but like, they were quite instrumental to me. And working in luxury retail, definitely a lot of female senior people, and a lot in hospitality as well, because like a lot of it really is about detail driven kind of attention to detail, being considerate and thoughtful, anticipating a lot of circumstances. A lot of these are part of what retail, luxury, um, hospitality, F&B service, F&B operations, like a lot of this is just about anticipation and being able to predict what someone wants without actually someone being able to articulate it to you. That's
Mm.
the trick. And so this kind of carries through and so many aspects, not just as like people management and team management, but also in the kind of day-to-day working with your creative partners, because a lot of designers are actually you'll be surprised, like not all of them are very extroverted. Quite a lot of them are quite introverted and very into their art. And so like being able to understand like what they're looking for in their careers, and also what they're looking for from you as a service provider, as a platform, is quite key in keeping everyone quite happy. But also for the client as well, because a lot of corporate clients, are looking for the above and beyond. But what does above and beyond mean to a service provider and a platform like ourselves? So a lot of this really in consumer retail is about soft skills. And a lot of the kind of mentor figures in my life have taught us different elements of it, whether it was in banking, like, kind of not leaving a single stone unturned, being super detail oriented, checking all the page numbers, making sure all the font sizes and bullet points were lined up in the same font size, like that level of OCD, to, in luxury where everything that you do has to be with some sort of flair. So like your PowerPoints always have to be beautiful, all the photos need to be high resolution, like every slide, how it looks and how good it looks sometimes matters more than what actually is the content on it. That is very retail. And in F&B operations, it's really obviously, uh, making people feel comfortable in your environment. And in hospitality, like figuring out the pain points of travel. Because, for example, my ex-boss, who's now the head of innovation for Marriott International, based out in Bethesda, Maryland, like Peggy, she was figuring out the innovation journey for hotels, and like feeling tired when he got off the plane, the long commute. Do you want to really be working with a front office person, waiting in a really large line for the loyalty program members? Like, these are things that, what can we fix as pain points on a customer journey? These are all things a lot of my mentor figures and guides helped us think through the problem and find creative ways to solve it. Yeah,
Wow.
and that's
I feel
key.
like you just gave us all a little like lesson here.
Yeah, it's custom.
So
Well, it is client
useful.
experience design. It's user experience design. It's just not UX design in a website sense, but UX design in a real life sense.
Yeah,
How do
I love
you
it.
optimize? Yes.
So helpful. So I like, okay, well, we're kind of coming short on time, and I thank you for sharing your story and your journey. But I usually like to ask people towards the end a few things, and I'm just going to throw out the questions, and you can pick and choose as you wish on how to answer this. But kind of like, what keeps you grounded in your day to day routine? What books or podcasts or mentors, like you mentioned, really inspired you along the way, or that when you meet other mentees, I mean, I guess you can be considered a mentor now. Like, what would you recommend them to read, or to reference, so to speak? And lastly, what 2 cent would you give the audience who are listening to this particular episode and resonate with your storyline? Or sometimes this particular question, I reverse it and say, what would you tell your younger self what you know now?
That's a lot of questions. Very rich. I guess I will go for how to keep grounded and what to tell the audience, or maybe
Okay.
younger self. Maybe it could be the same.
All right.
So I would say what keeps me grounded is actually, honestly, all the new people that I've met while I was pulling all the creators and makers and all the corporate clients onto this one platform ecosystem, um, really humbled me, because you realize there's so many people out there that are so talented. They are so low key. They really don't package or market themselves in any way. But when you really dig deep and talk to them, you're like, oh my goodness, you have such interesting thoughts, or like you downplay your talent so much. How can I help you succeed? Like, these are things that really inspire me every day. It's our partners, who are all trying to build the world that they want to live in. And it really makes me motivated to help them build the world that they want to live in, but they hope to share with everyone else as well. That's really energizing to me. And I guess in terms of like the words of advice to the audience and like what to tell my younger self, which could be the same, I guess no one would have known my career path would take me on this journey, to be very honest with you. Like, I mean, when you're young and you just graduate, you'd be like, oh, I should be a lawyer, or I'll be like a doctor, or I'll be like J.K. Rowling and have like a, book that will be turned into thousands of movies, and then I will never have to work again. But like, life never works out the way that you think it would. And I think it's so key to the way to get a fulfilling life emotionally, intellectually, I think, is because you are changing constantly and evolving at every step of the journey, you are also not the same person at every moment in time. And I think it's very key to remember that, because like a lot of young people be like, oh my goodness, my first job is so critical, so crucial. But actually it isn't. What you do in your first job probably has nothing to do with the next job that you're going to do, or nothing to the job that you do after the next. I think the key thing is to always know a part of what you're looking for and to constantly chase a role that offers a part of what you want. There's never going to be the perfect job, but it will always, if you follow your gut and your passion, you will find your way. And you should embrace your life's professional journey as an adventure, because it is, because it will always teach you something that you never realized about yourself and the world. And that could turn you into a very different person at every step. So embrace it and really love it, because the outcome is really the journey. The outcome's not the outcome. The outcome is the path. So
Oh,
yeah,
that was so
everyone.
well said. So
Yeah.
well said. I think that's a great way to conclude this conversation today.
Yes. Everyone, enjoy your adventure.
Yeah, it's really true. Enjoy adventure. And I'm gonna include all the resources so people can find you or connect with you. And if you're a maker out there, and want to be on the platform, there's ways to get contacted with your staff to get themselves on Vermillion too.
Yes.
So what else was I going to say? Oh, and I wanted to say, yeah, maybe, when you guys, the world is opened up, but, as more offline events happen, maybe there could be like a Vermillion pop-up out here in Taiwan too, or,
Yeah.
elsewhere in the region,
That's what
because
we
you guys
hope.
have quite a presence in Singapore already. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah. Well, is there anything else you wanted to add on before we conclude here?
Um, definitely check out our 240 Asian creators and makers and follow us on Instagram, Vermillion Lifestyle.
Yes.
Support us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jenn. Enjoy, everyone.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.